We're back with the Mission 43 podcast, and we are talking to two fellows from the Mission 43 Leaders Fellowship because we have opened up the application for this year's cohort.
Yep, it's open all the way until March 31st of this year if you want a chance to be a part of Mission 43's 2021-2022 cohort.
Awesome. So smash that subscribe button, and let's get started as we talk to Chad Rohr and Andrea Hovey.
Join us in learning about the stories and the people who inspire us. This is the Mission 43 podcast. I'm Dan Nelson.
And I'm Brian Madden. Idaho is our home. The military is what we did.
Hey, welcome back to the Mission 43 podcast. We're really excited to highlight the Leaders Fellowship, Mission 43's Leaders Fellowship this year. And with us, we have Chad Rohr and Andrea Hovey, who both are members of the inaugural cohort in 2019, right?
Yep.
Of Mission 43's Leaders Fellowship.
Holy cow, it's been that long?
It has. Well, currently we're at, 2021, and we have our second cohort going. Chad, first, can you tell us a little bit about your life from the very beginning?
From the very beginning. Well, I was born.
Perfect.
Actually, grew up in Minnesota, northern Minnesota.
I detect your accent.
Oh, yeah, it'll start coming out right as soon as you start talking about it.
Perfect.
But, senior year of high school, we moved out to Oregon. And during my senior year of high school, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? Because I moved away from all my friends and everything like that, and decided to join the Navy.
What'd you do in the Navy?
So I started off in the Navy for the first 5 years as an operations specialist, which is radar, navigation, communication kind of stuff.
That sounds sexy.
Yeah, very. Absolutely useless outside of the surface. One of those things.
Yep.
And,
Were you on a boat or a ship?
I was on a boat.
Okay.
Some people call them targets also, but
Yeah.
I was on the USS New Jersey, which that's a battleship, one of the original, World War II vessels. It was totally awesome. A little fun fact about that is the very first time I got underway on there was the day that the Iowa blew up. So
Oh, no kidding.
I was like, what happens when we shoot these 16-inch guns? Things blow up. So
You're dating yourself, Chad.
I know. That was way back in 88, 89. So, what were you doing back then? And then I was, we decommissioned the Jersey, and then we went on to the USS California, which is a nuclear-guided cruiser. So went from a conventional, World War II vessel to a high-tech, firing missiles all over the place kind of thing. And then got out after that. And, it was kind of difficult at the time, and I was like, what am I going to do back with my life? So I decided to get back into the service.
Yep.
And continued on with that and did 16 years of recruiting.
That is a long time to be in the recruiting box. How was that for you?
I truly enjoyed it.
Well, you're a people person.
Well, yeah, I just love being around people and being involved with, how they're going to start doing something and watch them as they grow and just kind of, make great things, do great things with their life. And that's, that means a lot to me. And that's kind of why I did it. And
How did you end up in Boise then?
so recruiting brought me here. And I started off in a recruiting office here and then ended up actually retiring out of MEPS back in 2012. So
I remember you. You were in charge of watching the duck walk thing, right?
No, I wasn't that. That was the doctor.
Oh,
I was in the
it was
Navy
memorable for
office
me.
doing that kind
I
of
was just
stuff.
familiar. I just
So,
familiar face, I guess.
right. Well, you shouldn't have been looking around when that was happening. So, but anyways, retired out of the Navy, and shortly after that, I actually became an Army civilian for a few years.
Really?
And I worked doing all the paperwork, watching everyone join the service, just a different way of, watching everyone go off to do these, crazy things.
You're still in the DOD machine then.
Yeah, absolutely. But as a civilian, so.
Right.
And then I heard about this silly thing called Mission 43.
What year was that?
2016.
Uh-huh. And then things changed from there, obviously, a little bit, because we're sitting here in 2021, and you're now the outdoor activity coordinator for Mission 43. And basically, anyone that's watching this has been involved in anything Mission 43 outside. If it involves running, hiking, biking, snowshoeing. Yep, skiing. Chad's been there, and you've probably seen him. out and about town. I think one of the new hashtags that Mission 43 has developed is selfies with Chad. Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll have to insert that one in there. So yeah. No, absolutely love it. So
we actually have 2 Navy guests here today.
That's right.
Yeah. So what's your background and path to the Navy?
So when I graduated high school, I came from a big family and knew that I needed to pay for college somehow. And I had an older brother who had applied to the Naval Academy, and he left back when they used to give you the big, thick handbook for colleges, he left that book around, and it was really glossy and had all these pictures of people on sailboats. And I was like, that looks kind of cool. So I decided that was what I wanted to do. And I walked in the kitchen, told my parents I was going to go to the Naval Academy, and then they promptly laughed at me and said, sure. And sure enough, I got in, and that kind of started my adventure in the Navy. So I served 5 years as a nuclear surface warfare officer. Spent my first 2 years on a destroyer out of Pearl Harbor, which was pretty cool because I got to do a conventional non-nuclear tour. Then I went to nuclear power school for a year. 6 months of that was in Charleston, South Carolina, and then I lived in upstate New York for 6 months. So it was kind of a neat little short stint in a couple different places. Yeah. And then I was on a carrier in Washington on the USS Abraham Lincoln for 2 years. Decided that was enough Navy for me. And so I got out right at my 5-year point and got promptly into the construction industry. So I worked for 7 years there. And we were talking before the show about a little trip I took. So the one thing I wish I'd done when I got out of the Navy is take some time off. I took 30 days between getting out of the Navy and starting my career in the construction industry. And I went like 0 to 60 and hit burnout pretty hard in about 7 years. So I took a full year and traveled. Ended up on a bicycle trip in Patagonia.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So first of all, lesson is don't laugh at Andrea if she tells you she's going to do something. Because here we are fast forwarding years and of service, and now you're back here. That was in Idaho you came back?
No, I actually got out of the Navy in Washington, so I stayed in the Seattle area after the military. And
no wonder you wanted to go to a different country.
Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, Seattle was great. It was a good run, but I took a break. And it's funny because I never actually intended to leave Washington, but when I decided to take that year off, I took a lot of trips. So I went to a couple national parks. So I'd be gone for about a month at a time and doing some little adventure type things.
Well, sorry. So just totally average bike trip to Patagonia.
Yeah,
How does one get to Patagonia, first of all?
Did you save up for this? Because that's you got to be deliberate about actually taking a year off in life.
Yeah. Well, so I had been saving to buy a house in the Seattle market, kind of like what Boise's doing right now. Things have gotten pretty expensive. So I was sitting on a decent nest egg, and I just kind of I literally had a meeting with my CEO, and a bunch of things became very clear to me. And I left that meeting and was like, I think I have to quit.
Oh, wow.
And then I went to an event that evening that company that I was a subcontractor. So the contractor we used to do a lot of work with has an annual party where they invite lots of different clients and lots of subcontractors, and they have a big Cinco de Mayo celebration. And I went to that event after this meeting, and I looked around the room, and I'm like, that person would give me a job or a recommendation. That person would give me a job or recommendation. It was kind of like, I just don't need to work here anymore. So I literally went into work the next day, talked to my boss, and put in my notice. And I ended up giving them a couple months to figure out a transition plan, because it was sort of unplanned for both me and them. But it was probably the best choice I've ever made. So I took that time that I didn't give myself right after the military to kind of figure out a little bit better what I wanted to do.
Okay. You earned it, though, because you knew
great.
You had a reputation.
Yeah.
So there's obviously risk in taking a year off, but when you made that decision, it wasn't just, it wasn't
just willy-nilly. I knew that I had the financial ability to do it, but I also chose to live very lean. I rented out my house, and so I did a lot of things to protect my financial situation while I did that. I mean, I put it together pretty quickly, but just like I think most of us who served in the military, sometimes when, we need to make a decision and you need to execute, we're pretty good at that. So I made the decision. Once the decision was made, the execution was pretty easy. But the Patagonia thing, I reconnected actually with a friend from the Coast Guard who was taking advantage of the Coast Guard sabbatical program. So
What is this?
What a Coast Guard sabbatical
I know.
program?
I didn't
another
know
break
about
before
this
we get to
either.
Patagonia.
Yeah.
What-
So
what is
the
this?
Coast Guard has a 2-year sabbatical program that you can take at any point in your service and return to service
This
without
podcast is going to be
lost
the
time.
greatest recruiting tool for the Coast Guard. If I would have known that.
I've heard
Yeah.
other branches are doing this now or are considering
I've
this.
heard of their consideration of it, yes.
Right. Yeah. So Coast
Army will
Guard.
be the last.
Yeah.
Air Force probably next on deck.
Yeah, probably.
So my friend at the time was an 04 or 05 select. I can't remember exactly where he was in his career. And we had met on a couple of ski trips and weren't particularly close friends. But every time that I've hung out with this person, it was always like some kind of outdoor adventure. And he posted on Facebook that he was starting his sabbatical right around when I quit my job. So I was like, dude, we should do something. And he
This guy
mentioned...
sounds like a Chad.
He is like a Chad. And he mentioned that he had been planning this trip to Patagonia and that he'd mentioned it to a few people. And if anybody wanted to go, no one was really taking him up on that. And I was like, well, if you're serious, I mean, if you ask me one more time, I'm going to commit to it. So you better be sure you want company. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. So I extended that trip didn't start until January. So it was 2015 when I quit my job in May or June-ish. And that trip wasn't scheduled till January, and we made the decision to do that in October. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not going back to work for a while. It's about a one-way ticket to Bariloche in Argentina, and figured I'd decide when I was ready to come back, and brought my bicycle in a box and lived out of my bike bags for 3 months, and it was pretty great.
Do you hablar the ass panel?
Horribly.
Well, I'm excellent, obviously.
Yeah, a
kidding.
little bit. I was
So were you by yourself for a bit before he showed up?
He and I met and started the trip together, so we did about the first 4 to 6 weeks together. And then during that time, we met a couple of 2 guys who were both traveling on their own who were from Germany and one guy from Argentina. And so when my friend left, I kept traveling with one of the Germans and an Argentine guy for a bit and met a couple of really cool American girls, met travelers from all over the world, really. I mean, it was by far and large the coolest thing I've ever done.
I got 1,000 questions on this one.
Yeah.
Number one piece of gear. Which one? What could you not live
Ooh.
without?
It's a good one. It turned out to be the one piece of gear I lost during the trip and missed the most was my wooden spoon. So there's a little kit you can get from, I think they sell it at Whole Foods.
I was going to say, did you make it?
No, I'm not that talented. But it's a little silverware set, and it's got like a bamboo fork, which let's just go ahead and say is useless. But it has a spoon, a little fork, and a set of chopsticks. And it's small enough to fit like the little MSR spatula, plastic one.
Yep.
And it all fits in a little case. And
This is the most hipstery tool I think I've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Well, here's why it's great, though. So when you're cooking on a camp stove,
Yeah.
everything melts, right? So
Yep.
the little wooden spoon is perfect for cooking on a camp stove, and it's lightweight. And it literally blew away one day in the wind.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know it had blown away until several minutes later, and someone told me, and then it was just nowhere to be found. And I was truly like, I spent the rest of the trip like everywhere we stopped trying to find another one because you don't realize how much you use a spoon until you don't have one.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, if you're like my mom, you could use it as an implement of discipline as well.
Correct.
The wooden
Yes.
spoon was something to be feared when I grew up.
Raise your hand if you have not had a spoon broken over your butt. Yeah.
So in that, like so you have this crazy adventure to Patagonia, and we're going to revisit this because I have tons of questions. But you kind of did something like when you say like I wish I had taken a break.
Yeah.
Honestly, one of the things that in like my half-ass opinion, I see so many guys in the military that are like, you know what, I'm going to get out and take a break, and then I'll figure out what's going to happen and what good's going to come to me after that. And it doesn't go well very often. So it's interesting, someone like of your success level, honestly saying, take a break first.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between taking a year-long break or taking more than 30 days because I mean, for my personal situation, my older brother actually, we're pretty close in age, and he had done ROTC and was a Navy guy as well. And he had done a shore duty, so our separation date, because I had 5 years, he was finishing his 6th year or something like that. I forget exactly how it worked. We were both getting out of the Navy pretty much at the same time. We were both stationed in Seattle at the time. So we reached out to there were a lot of headhunters that kind of help JOs who are separating find jobs. So we both went to a bunch of career conferences, and I started that process a little bit earlier, mostly because we were kind of supporting each other through that process, and we both would go. And I got my job offer, I think, in April or May, and I got out in 2008. So I still look back, and hindsight's 2020. And to your point, Dan, there were a bunch of people that got out of the Navy when I got out of the Navy who decided to take unemployment for a year or whatever, and the market crashed. I mean, if we all remember what happened in 2008, a lot of those guys end up going back into the reserves or just really struggling for quite a while. So I guess when you put it in that lens, I did the right thing, but I probably could have negotiated another month later. I accepted my job, I think it was April or May, and I didn't get out till June. And so I started like the first week of August that year. So I basically took the month of July and then started my job immediately. And I think just having a little bit more, I thought that was going to be a lot of time. Honestly, when I was getting out, I was like, oh, I got a whole month.
Yeah.
But I think 2 months or 3 months would have been, I think, just enough to kind of process, because I didn't really have, the command I was at was pretty high stress, and I had to cash out all my leave. I didn't get any leave at the end of that. So it was just basically termination. I worked till my very last day in the Navy, and then, I had 30 days of nothing.
Yeah.
And
you mentioned the difference between 30 days and a year. Do you think there's any professional implications? Like, you have to explain taking a year off to a potential employer.
Yeah.
Do you recommend that?
It's interesting because I wasn't really sure how my job hunt was going to look. I moved, we can get to how I ended up in Idaho in a minute, but I moved to Idaho after this sabbatical period of time. And then I did a couple of other things in between before I decided to go back into the construction industry. And I was pretty concerned about how I was going to explain the time that I took. But I think mostly it was a hell of a good story.
Yeah.
So I was able to, leverage that in my interviews. And I think it gave me some perspective and clarity that helped me. But I think if you're just getting out, you already have a lot stacked against you. And I think if you say I needed 3 months or 6 months to do something with my family, but maybe you're actively job hunting during some period of that time, it looks a lot different than if you just don't do anything for a year, because a lot of people are doing what I did. So, you're kind of an anomaly if you're taking a ton of time off. It's not a bad thing, but I think have a plan. Do have some kind of professional development happening during that period of time. If you take a year off because you want to go to school part-time, you want to learn a new skill, maybe you want to travel and write or do something, but maybe just doing nothing is a little harder.
Well, if I was like a job interviewer and you came to me like backpacking or bikepacking or whatever through Patagonia and meeting all these people from like international travelers, sounds a lot different than like, hey, I've been on my couch living off malted hops and bong resin for the past 12 months. You know what I mean? So I think so, at least. And
agreed.
I would be interested just to hear that story.
Well, and that was fun.
How long of a break of service did you have between when you left active duty and then went back to active duty?
It was about a year and a half.
Year and a half. And then did you have a plan in place, or did you have a similar? Do you have a similar Patagonia experience?
Young. How that first enlistment, you're coming out of it, you think you have everything's going to be handed to you, and reality hit, and it doesn't happen that way. I wasn't prepared. I thought, it was the big, I'm going to come home and everyone's going to greet me and everything is going to go great, and it didn't. But I got an amazing job though after it, in between. But the business shut down, and then I was like, okay, I have a family, kids are on the way, gotta take care of it, and there was a unique program that I got back into the service on. So it was basically Naval Reserve recruiting, and you're supposed to stay in your local area for the rest of your career. That program went away after I got into it, and then
that's impressive.
Ultimately, converted over to, regular recruiting type of scenario, and did several years from there. But that it's not as easy, and you don't. It's not like you're coming home from World War II.
Yeah.
and everyone's greeting you into it, and it's all about being prepared. And, and that was another thing that I just really upset myself with and realized is, take that time when we have it while we're in the service to get your education taken care of if you haven't already. I was always caught into the work, busting it. I don't have time for myself to take care of that. It's all about production, doing what you're supposed to be doing. And that after I retired is when I started, I went back to school and got my bachelor's and started all that. So, I just hated myself for that.
It's tough to have an excuse nowadays with, you don't have to use your GI Bill. There's tuition assistance. There's thousands and thousands of dollars available to you each year. Mm-hmm. And so now I almost kind of look at people who haven't done anything. It's like, I'm not impressed. Like you're missing a huge opportunity with prepping yourself to get out of the military.
Yep. Well, and to Chad's point, the idea that you're going to have more free time when you get out is completely unrealistic. Things that I wasn't prepared for. You have a lot more time off when you're a service member, even though you deploy and everything else. Like you get every government holiday. There's pre-deployment leave, post-deployment leave. Usually there's some kind of holiday stand down that's substantial. Depending what your industry is, you may never have that amount of time off again in your life. So if you can't find the time to fit in education outside of work, or most commands that I've seen will allow you time in your workday to work on your education. That's not necessarily the case outside of work. It's a lot harder. It's going to cut into your family time and personal time a lot more if you wait. I mean, it's still worth doing, but it's different.
I think we all know the dirty secret about the military is we spend half our day BSing and joking around, and half the day is maybe productive. So there is plenty of time to get things done.
Yeah, completely agree.
That does not happen in the civilian world. Like time is
it.
money, and you better perform. So
doesn't feel like it when you're there, but in retrospect, never had more time than
then.
Yeah,
and it's fun.
It is. That's what I miss about it. I think more than many things, but the BS sessions definitely are a part of it. Now, in that, we're specifically want to talk like the Leaders Fellowship, Mission 43's fellowship that we have put on. We have 2 cohorts now, and right now the application window is open for our 3rd cohort. It'll be 2021, 2022. Like I said earlier, like you guys, and actually I was lucky enough to be a part of the 1st cohort as well, and that's how I met you, and that's how I got to really know you, is through this really unique experience of the Leaders Fellowship. So I guess what I want to ask you is, when you came to Idaho, you were brought here by recruiting. I still don't know how you got here yet. But
via Patagonia, we know that at this point.
You bike packed your way up Central America. But when you got here, what was the catalyst for you finding Mission 43? What was the challenge that you were facing, I guess, to even seek out something like Mission 43?
Go ahead, Chad. You first.
What, on how we met, or how you found Mission 43?
Yeah.
Mission 43 just kind of looked like this crazy opportunity that it was perfect in my time of life on when I needed to jump onto something. And it was funny as I heard about it, saw some things with that were going on. It was funny. This guy named Tony Torres reached out to me.
Tony.
Tony. But that's how, through RWB was the initial. And then I was like, okay, what else is going on here? And then Tony and I connected, and he was actually driving to Idaho, and we were chit-chatting. And he was like, I'm coming in here for Mission 43, and we're going to do all this kind of stuff. And, and Hire Heroes USA was introduced there. And
Tony initially ran the Hire Heroes USA team in Idaho. He was the first guy who helped stand that up.
The OG.
The OG, the gangster. You could call Tony the gangster. But, and he and I got together. We went over my resume, and we reached out to some other things. And then also I ran into another program that I went to school, basically, to learn coding at the same time. Mm-hmm. And that was, okay, Chad, you're quitting your job and you're going to go to school full time and you're going to do this great thing, and that's so valuable to me right now, because I'm I know about all this stuff that everyone's doing. You're seeing commercials about it all that right now and what's happening. And so it was just a great introduction to that. And that kind of was pivotal in me making a decision to change my life, because before I was stuck in a rut. I was around great people, but career-wise, I was stuck. I just was like stuck in the government grind, just punching the clock. I didn't see myself really progressing and being what I wanted to be. And, and that it was just, I don't know, it was eye-opening. So it was funny is because the weekend we chatted about the coding school. I was like, okay, we're gonna go off and we're gonna run the the Grand Teton Relay is what it was. So we're gonna do a relay of 180 miles. A nice Sufferfest
with Mission 43.
It was RWB,
right?
But,
Team RWB,
but RWB
Red, White,
was
Blue.
Part of it at the time.
Yep.
And it was just a bunch of good people getting out to do great things together. And I was like, what? In the Navy I ran maybe a mile and a half twice a year. And then we go out and do this. I ended up doing over some ridiculous amount, and doing all kinds of elevation game. But the greatest thing was just meeting all the people that were involved in it. Today we're friends, and actually posted a picture on Facebook of that event today.
That was that experience, that relay was your first physical challenge outside of the military?
Yeah. Well, actually, no, there's one other one. It was help me with that.
Well, we're just surprised because it seems like all you do is run.
Shocks me.
You're training for a full distance Ironman right now and the Smoke and Fire 400. So
I know.
That's cool.
That's the funny thing is I never ran. I never did anything until Mission 43 hit the road. Kidding. It was that was
would have never guessed.
No, I had no idea.
Because you run it for us.
We might need to relook.
Yeah, all right. If you're interested and you're physically fit.
Right?
Have experience.
I showed up to an event
fit.
and they're like, hey, we're going to do some rucking. And I'm like, what's rucking?
Yeah.
Maybe
people don't ruck
maybe.
for the record.
Is that not?
It's just
not even
a
on
thing.
accident? How do you get your stuff on the ship and off?
A sea bag.
Sea bag.
You just carry it on.
Yeah, with a big duffel bag, basically. Yeah. So, you throw it in a rack and you forget about it until you get out of the service.
You don't carry it around the ship or anything. We don't have to do that.
Oh.
Yeah, there's no punishment where you have to walk around the ship with a sea bag or anything.
Carrying a ruck's not punishment.
No.
Yeah,
it's enlightenment.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how did you find out?
Revolution.
Yeah. How did you find out about Mission 43 and?
So I guess this is the appropriate time to tell you how I got to Idaho. So
finally,
yeah.
I know. I've been holding out. So I was in a coffee shop somewhere in Chile, and I was checking Facebook because I had Wi-Fi for an hour. And this friend of mine from way back in the day had posted a picture of him with a mule, and y'all might know him as Matty Bishop. And he posted this thing just saying, "Oh yeah, I bought a mule to do this coffee business in Idaho," and
makes sense.
And I was like, I have to read more, so I sat there for 10 minutes and waited while it loaded because we're talking dial-up speed Wi-Fi here. And after I read his article, I was like, oh, man, that's awesome. So I hadn't talked to him since graduation. He was my classmate, and his wife, Becca, is also a Naval Academy graduate and was in my company a year younger than both of us. So I sent him an email and just said, dude, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but it's pretty cool to see another Naval Academy graduate doing something other than government contracting.
Right.
And, in the grind, in the machine right now. So, good on ya. And he wrote back and said, oh, thanks. And then he actually sent me a second email about a day later that was like, hey, by the way, I'm kind of starting a business. Would be interested if you're, curious at all or trying to figure out what you're going to do next.
Needs a mule handler.
Well, he was actually looking at a different business at the time, which is another story for another day. But we got to talking, and he invited me to come out and visit when I got back, which was a couple months later. And I kind of had just a great experience the weekend that I came out to visit, and knew I didn't want to be in Seattle, didn't really have another plan, and was like, yeah, why not? I'll try Idaho. And so I moved here. He helped me. I rented a townhouse, sight unseen. He helped me find a place, and I literally knew him and the parents of another friend from college, and no one else in the state of Idaho. Deep network, and so
you're not a typical academy graduate. This is a very non-traditional exit
great.
in.
Yeah, there's a few of us out there that are not exactly, in the box, so to speak. Gotcha. But yeah, so that's actually what drew me to Mission 43 is it kept popping up. And you guys were using Brian Stan at the time for advertising, and he's a classmate. So I was like, well, I don't know, I'll look into it. And so I filled out the info form, and I don't know if you knew this, but Brian and I were the same year group. So he was West Point 03, and I was Navy 03. So my intro email resulted in like an immediate barrage of shit for being a Navy graduate. And so, which started an instant friendship or kinship there. And Mission 43 has been amazing to me just because it filled a gap I didn't know I needed. I kind of put my military service in a box, went straight into civilian life and didn't really look back. And I think reconnecting with such great people here, kind of like Chad, is, I think I'd been in a rut before I quit my job. It was finding my way back through that trip and then just kind of rebuilding in a place with some of the same people that I kind of missed or personalities I missed that I hadn't had in my professional life in Seattle. And then also, the opportunity to give back and be involved in the community that Mission 43 provides, I think was also something that has been pretty positive for me. And so the fellows, to get to your original question, is why was I interested in that? I think, it'd been a long time since I'd had any leadership training or actual professional development in that realm. I mean, I've done project management classes and things like that, but nothing that was specifically focused on leadership. And the opportunity to do that with a group of veterans was just really exciting to me. So I jumped at the chance.
It's a really rare chance, honestly. And if you're listening to this and you want to learn more, go to mission43.org/Leaders Fellowship to learn more specifically about that, or just check out our events page on Mission 43. Subscribe to the YouTube channel here so you can kind of hear more from people like this. But like I was saying, it is rare that there's an organization, in my opinion, that puts something out there that's a leadership development experience specifically for military veterans and military spouses without asking for anything in return. You know what I mean? This is a competitive applicant field that we have for this Leaders Fellowship. And I guess the ask from the people that fund this experience is be a leader in Idaho. Be a good community member and give back to your community because you now have an enhanced leadership network. You now have advanced leadership skills. And, beyond that, I don't know too many things that exist like that. Even grad school and everything. You're paying, one way or another. You're bettering yourself and you're getting your master's degree or PhD or whatever, but you're paying. It's an investment on your part. And I think the cool thing about Leaders Fellowship when I went through with you guys was it was an investment of time and effort, but totally worthwhile and the most meaningful way of connecting with people like you who I never would have known you.
It's true.
Yeah.
Probably never would have crossed paths outside of Mission 43.
No. And it is a really diverse crowd. We have, at the table, you have 2 Weirdo Academy people, Navy, Army. You have Chad, enlisted swine, who didn't get his education until he actually already got out of the military. And then you have me, weirdo, Army guy, whatever. It's really unique. And then we all got out at such different times, too. Some still serving and, retired, separated after 5 active, separated after 20 active, or almost, right?
21.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Perfect. I'm just saying it's a unique group that the mix of demographics is something special.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but I was lucky enough to get to come back and help out with the hiking trip this year with the class 2 and adding the opportunity for spouses. Not only was it I think it made for an even more interesting dialogue. Their perspectives, there's so much out there for military veterans. We talked earlier about the educational opportunities. Not everyone extends that to, the spouses who are at home and kind of holding down the fort and giving, I think, every bit as much or more than their partners in service to our country. It's just so cool to get to have them be a part of it. And their leadership shows up in different ways, leadership with their families, leadership in their communities, and a lot of, leadership within the other spouse groups and things like that. And they just had such great perspective to add that I personally was humbled and learned a ton from, hearing what they had to say about everything that we were talking about. So I think it's awesome to have that as part of this group.
Can you tell us a little bit more about like how it started, like phase one? What was your experience there, and what that was with Mike Irwin? Chad, take that one.
I feel like I love Mike's story, and he has so much perspective to add to everything, and I guess this is probably the biggest reason why I like to get out and do all the activities is, that moment of solitude where you gain all of that clarity. So Mike basically aligned us with character strengths, what's important to you, the good, the bad, how you can improve on them, how you can make sure that you have the right people that are involved in your life that are going to help you develop personally and professionally. And when you're making those choices, you get out, you have clarity, and just make sure that, you're making the right choice, and I like it because, you get out and you push yourself to the limits, and then you find out your true character and you make the right decisions from there. So, with our cohort, we had the 2-day experience with Mike, which was great.
And this is the first time you all got together, 2-day in-person workshop with him.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was when we met all the fellows for the first time too. There's a little bit of email communication, but then, it was getting together.
That's when the real butt sniffing starts. Everyone's trying to feel each other out.
Storm and Norman.
Navy.
Yeah, that's funny because that's, where all the questions come, where are you at? And it was, and that was really meaningful because we, just like you brought up earlier, is we found out how diverse the group was. Yeah. We had a vast, difference. Military spouses doing great things here in the valley, and pilots and enlisted Navy, Marine Corps. We had law enforcement, Northern Idaho, Southern Idaho. Just all across the state. So it's a wide variety. And, and that was when all the learning kind of started, and we were starting to get together, sharing with each other, figuring out what's important to each other, and just going from there.
Yeah. So. And our whole premise of that first phase in that 2-day workshop is before you're going to go lead others, you better be squared away first. So like you better be able to lead yourself, take time, understand what your values are, what's important, and how you are as a leader. So, and then that transitioned to phase 2, and you talked about you led the group, and one of the things we like to do is incorporate previous fellows back into the current class. So can you tell us a little bit about phase 2 and what we call the wilderness immersion and what that is and what you did?
Yeah, so it's a backpacking trip, and pretty much did it the same way the last 2 years. My understanding it's going to change. So
we're going to Patagonia this year.
Yes, all right.
Sign me up.
If only you can find a
That
guide.
would be amazing. So it's a pretty intense hike the first day up into a camp, and we incorporate. You get a group like this together. It's pretty cool to see people have their first backpacking experience, and we've had that every year. Some people are kind of seasoned hunters, camping, backpacking. But even for the folks that have a lot of experience, it's maybe been a while since they've done anything in a group setting like this. So I think for every person, there's a certain amount of personal discomfort in an experience like that, whether it's physical, mental, or emotional, keeping a group together, being patient with people at different levels, all of that. Yeah. And, for me, it had been a while since I'd had that experience. And I think there's also a certain amount of anxiety everyone goes through, like, am I going to be able to keep up? Did I bring the right stuff? I don't know. But as you work through that and you lean on your teammates and get to sit out in the most beautiful sawtooth wilderness location around, frankly, and get to have some good like campfire style conversation about leadership and life. There's something about being in the dark with low light where people just sort of open up and talk a little bit more. I just thought it was a great experience both times. And just to see people change from day 1 to day 3 in their comfort level, because everybody's a little kind of jumpy, a little anxious day 1, a little nervous, how much does your pack weigh? Oh man, did you bring this?
Were you guys surprised at all that it got emotional? You know what I mean? Like in those fireside conversations when we go over, we have the Mission 43 provides like this leadership anecdotal type stories that we dissect throughout the trip, but really the magic, like you're saying, happens by the campfire. By the way, we did not start a campfire because it's
Yeah.
illegal in the Salt Lake Valley.
That's why I said low lighting.
Right, low lighting by the glimmer of our headlamps.
By the flashlights that be.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was surprised both years now being able to experience both that people, I don't know, I didn't expect people to open up the way they did. And it's like, you forge the mental through the physical, you tear down just a little bit. Like you said, you add some physical discomfort and a little bit of time and a little bit of separation from their norm. And it's amazing to see these really, smart, professional, hardworking, and just hard people be willing to open up.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was my perspective. It surprised me.
Yeah, it was really nice when you're out of cell service, everyone's shutting it down, you strip it back, and then you start just really thinking for real. And that's where it's truly valuable, is because you're not caught up in the rat race and going around the axle, all that kind of stuff. That's when you can actually contemplate on what's going on. And I think that also you set the stage on what you're going to do, and then you strip that stuff away, and then you understand that this is what you're going to do, and that's when you start sharing and you go through your experiences together.
So I was surprised that on your question, like you take someone who looks like that person has no problems, like they have no issues, totally squared away.
I mean, I'm standing right here, but
well, yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
And then
it was not me. He's not talking about me.
No, it's interesting. Like we all have problems in our lives. You may have a shell, and rightfully so. You don't have to share everything with the public, but once you get in that setting, like you see, like, oh, they're going the same thing I go through. So
yeah. Well, and for me, I think one of the more powerful things is every other session through the Leadership Fellowship program, there's some sort of professional speaker or, leader in the community or formal CEO or what have you that comes in. That particular event is peer-to-peer leadership. I mean, everyone sitting here is the leaders of that group. I mean, we did that. It wasn't like we brought in some special event planning coach. It was very much a peer-to-peer situation, which I think has its own power in, asking each other questions and kind of creating that space of comfort where there's really no one, like I was the group leader, but I mean, I'm no more experienced than anyone else in that group from a leadership standpoint. So I thought that was pretty powerful. And then the other thing is just getting away from everything and just some of the moments of comedy that come up. I believe there was some Marco Polo that occurred.
Coldest game of Marco Polo.
We missed that one. We went off.
I know, but it still was memorable, even though I didn't participate because of the storytelling that followed the Marco Polo. But I think just an opportunity to kind of let your hair down and be silly with some other people in a pretty emotionally safe space is a great part of that trip and why it's so awesome.
I think that's the first time that anyone's ever mentioned any kind of hike or rucking experience with me as an emotionally safe space. I appreciate that. I'm going to write that down. Noted today.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Even though I had very little to do with anything that you're actually talking about. I thought so. You touched on kind of what we call phase 3. So after the wilderness immersion, we come back, and then on a monthly basis, the fellows come together in various locations, but always for a reason, and always to learn from each other, continuing the peer-to-peer, but also from some of these like really incredible pillars of our community in all kinds of economic sectors, but all leaders with quite a story to tell.
I think part of that too is a lot of those leaders are purely civilian. They've grown up in a civilian community and really haven't been exposed to people like you. So half of that experience for them is talking about their leadership experience, what they've accomplished, but also saying like, holy cow, I had no idea Andrea Hovey was in our community and she does all this and is like a heavy hitter. So, part of that is a great experience for those guests also.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, just being surrounded by you guys and people like you, and even the current cohort of fellows that I'm, only orbiting around, it does make me feel like I have to step up my game.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly, because I came into the first cohort, the 2019 cohort of Leaders Fellowship. I had no idea what the hell I was going to do post-military. I was right at the transition period, like almost to the day of when I left the Army, and so. Yeah, and to hear like, oh, well, I'm like running this hospital, or this department or this construction firm, or at least their nonprofits, like all kinds of things. I felt obligated to do something with that experience.
I like that it holds us accountable.
Yeah.
As we feel a responsibility of what we have to give, and then showcase, our experiences and giving back to the community and showing that we can lead in our value and believing in that. So, everything's a mindset. So I just love that this, sharpens it up a little bit and reminds us, what we were doing in the past.
Yeah.
And, it shows that we are obligated to build up and take care of our community here. So,
well, and not only that, but having a new group of peers to bounce ideas off of, and I looked forward to it as an escape from my everyday, every time that we met during that period of time, because I knew it was a time I was investing in, building my own skills, but I also thought it was just an amazing sounding board to work through some things I was challenged with in my job, or outside of my job, and just to get perspectives, because the people in that room are so when you've served in the military and you've been around there's a group think that happens in the military, and there's a shared experience and a shared way of approaching problems, and I don't have that in my current work, and having some other perspectives outside of that to kind of bounce ideas around and really think through stuff was invaluable, and continues to be. That group from our cohort, not everybody has stayed local. Some people have moved away or done other things, but for those of us who are still in town, and even the ones who have moved away, I'm still just grateful to have that network. And then having met this year's cohort, there's definitely some new bonds we made there, and I hope to continue to be involved in the program because it's such an amazing group of people, and I think we do need each other, and I think we can all benefit from having that resource available for support as we develop. The higher you get in an organization, the higher you grow in your leadership career, the harder it is to have a peer group. It's hard to have that at work when you're a boss. You can't go talk to your employees about these challenges. You need.
Let me tell you why you suck.
Yeah,
why
exactly.
It's hard to work
Nobody
with you.
wants to hear that. Yeah, they say it's always lonely at the top, but this is a way to make leadership less lonely.
Yeah.
Which I think is really cool.
You just kind of nailed it. I didn't know how to describe it at first, but I think for me, the Leaders Fellowship was the first experience outside the military where people didn't have to say like, "Hey, you're a leader. You're a leader. You're a leader." They just they come together and everyone's like, "Lead." And so it's like that expectation, like, "Hey, we're all here. Look at her. Look at him. They're all doing it, and they're doing it well. So for whatever reason I was selected here, you don't have to pat somebody in the head and tell them over again, you're a leader, you're a leader." It's not about that, because that would not make me feel as good as it felt to be in the Leaders Fellowship for me, because the expectation is there. This is the investment we're putting into you individually, into your cohort collectively, now multiple cohorts as we continue to grow this network.
Yeah.
Lead.
Yeah, coming into the room, you're not there to learn how to be a leader. You're there to grow your leadership skills, because all of us already are leaders, and I think that is great. It is cool.
And the application for the 2021-2022 cohort is open now, so anyone
Awesome.
listening or watching, make sure you go to mission43.org. It'll be in our events. Check out our socials on Facebook and Instagram, and make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube channel for continued content with badass veterans like Chad and Andrea. I don't know, we haven't even touched on the full Leaders Fellowship. We talked about phase 3 a little bit, and phase 4, I guess just what we're calling the fellowship forward. What now, sitting here today, do you feel you get from the Leaders Fellowship?
The best thing is all the networking and the opportunities. I don't think that I would have stepped out and owned my real estate business without it, and having the confidence in doing that, and it's been said numerous times, is I enjoy being out with people in the community and meeting people where they're at, and then helping them achieve anything that they want to do. So that's my happiness in life, is when I can get out and help somebody do something that they want to do, and watch them do good shit. So
that's apparent to anybody that knows you.
Yep.
So, that's my biggest thing and that's been my whole life, is just, from Boy Scouts to joining the service, my whole recruiting career in the Navy, and now, giving back to the community and just trying to make, we're all here together, and we can only make it better just with ourselves, and you can only do it with sharing. So.
And if you want to get a little bit of that feel, just check out mission43.org on our events page. And basically any event, well, not basically, every event that we have and put on Mission 43, Chad is involved in because of the energy and because of the sincerity that he does his job, which is, just like you said, finding people or meeting people where they're at and then helping them improve that next step. You've done that for a lot of us.
Well, and I want to go back to what you said about who we want to join this or who we want to be part of this. And I think there's a little bit of an intimidation factor. And I know we're talking about all these amazing people, and I hope that we're not scaring anyone away, because at the end of the day, we're all on a path of leadership, and that's a long road and a long journey. And even an experienced leader can continue to grow, and someone new to leadership can gain a lot of skills and have a network of mentors coming from this program. And I think that anyone who is striving to be a leader, whether that's at home, at work, in their community, could benefit from this and would be welcome. So don't shy away from applying if you're thinking, well, I'm not the CEO of a company, or I don't run my own small business, or I don't, do X, Y, or Z. I mean, we have a teacher in this year's program. We have some small business owners. I work for a bigger company. But there's kind of a broad range of folks.
Yeah, and military background too. I didn't do that much military. I was in the Guard. I was in the Reserve.
I was enlisted for only 3 years.
We have in the same cohort an 06, a retired full bird colonel in the Army, and then a Navy E2. It doesn't matter.
Yep. I think if you are interested in learning new leadership skills and you're striving to be a leader in your community, at work, or whatever, this is a great program, and you'd be welcome and you would gain something from it. So. Just want to not miss that opportunity to share that.
Can't say it better than that.
No, we can't. So, thanks for being here, guys.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Again, thanks for everyone watching, listening. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mission 43. And please, if you're interested at all in the Leaders Fellowship, the application is going to close here on March 31st. So make sure you get it in, check it out, and continue to lead, learn, inspire. Thanks for joining us for the Mission 43 podcast. Our purpose is to provide you opportunities to lead, learn, and inspire throughout your Idaho communities.
We want to hear what you thought. Like, subscribe, or leave a comment below.